Hello, my name is John Smithin, and I'm the research director of the Aurora Philosophy Institute here in Aurora, Ontario, Canada. And with me today is Ronan Grunberg, who's the Vice President Technology of the API. How are you doing, Ronan?
I'm doing very well. John, thanks a lot. It's going to be an interesting discussion, I think.
Yeah, so great. Thanks for being here. And I have a question to ask you.
hmm
So, Ronan, what do you think about Plato's philosophy?
I have always been a fan of Plato's, and I think he's touched on some really interesting ideas. And one of the key ideas that I am particularly fond of is his notion of knowledge and how knowledge is possible. Now, you have to think that Plato was thinking about these things a long, long time ago. And one of the questions that he had was, how is knowledge possible in a world that's always changing? And this was really harking back to the old Heraclitean problem of, well, things in the world are constantly in a state of flux. So if things are in a state of flux, how can we know them, right? And this is where he got the idea of you can't step into the same river twice. And in essence, what this rejects is knowledge through experience, because experience is too unstable. And Plato picks up on this problem, and basically he says, well, we don't need to look at experience for knowledge. We can look at something else for the truth.
And what role did the theory of forms play specifically?
Aha. Well, this is what Plato came up with, right? He said that we don't need to look at the world of experience. There is another world, the world of forms, which are made up of perfect, eternal templates. And everything in the world of experience, is represented by this perfect template that doesn't change. It's universal, and it's eternal. It has always existed, and it will always exist. And everything in the world is represented by some template, some form. For example, justice has a form, trees have a form, everything in the world of experience has a form, mathematical concepts have forms. And what we need to do is not worry about the world of experience. We need to worry about the forms if we want to get knowledge. In fact, Plato said that the world of experience actually can misrepresent knowledge, right? It can distract us from knowledge because it's pure opinion. If you know one thing, you just know that one thing, but you don't know the essence. And that's not knowledge, that's opinion. Knowing one thing, what we're concerned about, says Plato, is knowing the real thing, which is the form.
Yeah, so essence comes before existence then. The essence is there in the form before actual existence.
Yeah, exactly. So, as I said, forms are universal. They've always existed. They always will exist. And, everything in the world of experience has to conform to the forms. And what Plato says is that they participate in the forms, right? But they're not eternal, and they're not perfect. They're not universal things of experience. The things that exist here are defined by the forms. The forms give everything its identity. So the form exists before particular things, right? And this is where the idea that essence precedes existence really comes from, right? Because essence, forms, comes before existence.
So, in a sense, you could argue that the 20th century existentialists, people like Heidegger and Sartre, by the way, I'm trying to get myself out of the habit of saying contemporary existentialists. This was 100 years ago.
Right.
The 20th century existentialists then were reacting against this Platonic notion.
Right. So existentialists were not particularly fond of Plato. They rejected the idea of a predefined essence, basically because they said it confined human beings, right? It determined what they were. And they thought it was way too rigid, too deterministic, and it took away human freedom to decide for oneself what one will become. It defines what a person would become, and said, you can't define yourself. It's already there in the form. Um, so existentialists, shifted in another direction. They basically said that uh, human beings are free, they are radically free, and they have a choice. And specifically, what they can choose is who they will become. Uh, you're not born with meaning. Plato says you're born with meaning. The forms give you meaning. But existentialists say you're not born with meaning. You create meaning for yourself.
So, in a nutshell, if we can put it this way, the existentialists, as the name would imply, would have existence before essence. And as you were saying, as it were, you must create your own essence.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is a key idea in existentialism. Existence precedes essence. Uh, we exist first and foremost, and then we define our own essence. There are no a priori essences. There's no cosmic blueprint. Life doesn't have built-in meaning. It's up to you to create your own meaning. And this idea is liberating, according to the existentialists. But it's also burdensome because you have to create your own meaning. You're free. And too much freedom is difficult to take because you have to make the right choices. What if you make the wrong choices? And the core idea for the existentialists is that you are what you do. Okay, it's not about what you think; it's about what you do.
Another question, then, okay, which I think will bring things full circle,
Yeah.
is where do we place the philosophy of St. Thomas Aquinas? We're now talking about the 13th century AD. So we're comparing the 4th century BC, that's Plato, the 20th century AD, and the 13th century. Between the 4th century BC and the 20th century, the issue was, does essence come before existence or vice versa? Aquinas comes somewhere in the middle of this timeline. Actually, when you think about it, more towards the modern end than the ancient end.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, how would you bring Aquinas into the picture?
Okay, so Plato made a terrible mistake, in my opinion. And the mistake was that he rejected experience. Essentially, what Plato did was kind of draw a line between the head and the body. The body is not important. The head is important. Your rational thoughts are important. It's all about logic and thinking and ideas. But the physical experience is not all that important. It's not important at all. In fact, it can be a distraction. But Aquinas kind of shifted in a different direction. Aquinas believes in forms, but he also values experience. So he argued that created things, the things of experience, reflect God. Now, Aquinas talked in terms of God, but really what he was getting at was how one can know things, right? Uh, Given that he was a theologian, he kind of framed things in terms of God, but we can take it beyond just God. Um, what he is basically getting at is this notion that the things that are surrounding us reflect God, and that uh, we can know God, we can know the forms, in other words, uh, through the world of experience. The world of experience mirror the eternal truth that is represented by God. So the material world is not a distraction for Aquinas. It's not an illusion. It's a path to knowledge and to the divine. So what Aquinas really does, and I really, I think, respect him for this, is he balances metaphysics, Plato, with the real world observations of material experiences.
So is it fair then to call Aquinas's position an intermediate position between Plato on the one hand and the 20th century existentialists on the other.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say that Aquinas sits between Plato and existentialism. Now, he has a deep belief in Plato, uh, but he also believes in objective experiences as leading to essence. And that's a completely new shift, right? And it makes knowledge related to what we are seeing in the world around us. It's no longer separated from the world, it's part of the world. And looking at the world then becomes meaningful. He doesn't draw this separation between the mind and the body, right? The body and the mind work together, and they are mutually dependent, right? So uh, Aquinas basically gets to the idea that you can find meaning through life, not just through thinking, through experience.
Hmm. So, well, thank you, Ronan. We seem to have dealt with these three important issues in a relatively short period of time, much less than 2 millennia.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for example, and thank you for clarifying that. I just make one final remark. Maybe it would have saved some time if Heidegger and Sartre and people had read their Aquinas.
Yeah, Aquinas actually was
If you
very,
know what I
very
mean.
absolutely. He was very insightful for his time, and was uh, kind of an incipient. Well, I wouldn't say existentialist, but he was an incipient um, observer of reality, and understood, that reality can give us real knowledge, and it's not just about looking up to the divine. You have to look at the material world to actually get to the divine.
Yeah, excellent. Well, thanks a lot, Brandon.
You're welcome. My pleasure.